I bet you've seen this Mew a million times recently. Well, this guy is just the surface level of what's going on with the brand new Pokemon market. We're seeing more and more Chinese Pokemon cards show up online, on eBay, even in local shows. So why are people hyping it up so much? And why do they play by such different rules? From exclusive promos to grading companies you've never heard of, it's a completely different game that's just getting started. If you're like me and want to learn more about what's going on, stick around. Hi, I'm John, and I've been deep in the Pokemon community for over a decade. At 19, I started TCG Royals, which began as a local TCG community for Pokemon. I now have aspirations to open my own Pokemon shop. Follow along if you want some insights and stories on my journey ahead. This is a deep dive into why Pokemon in China is booming and what makes it so unique. So first, why is Pokemon even blowing up in China right now? Well, the story starts in 2019, when traditional Pokemon cards were first printed. But the one I want to talk about today is Simplified Chinese, which had been blowing up and was only released in 2022, which makes this a completely new landscape and very unpredictable. That is way behind Japan and the US. But just in a few years, the market has absolutely exploded. Shows are popping up, collector communities are growing fast, and prices on exclusive Simplified Chinese promos are rising. Well, one reason might be their real estate collapse. For years, property was the go-to investment for a lot of people in China. But now, some are looking elsewhere, and collectibles are becoming more attractive. Pokemon, with its global brand and emotional nostalgia, is starting to look like a safer, more fun place to park money. That doesn't mean everyone's flipping. Many people are actually starting the collection from scratch. That means new collectors, new buying patterns, and a lot of attention on what will happen next. But there's two different kinds of Chinese cards. There's traditional and there's simplified. And the one we're talking about today is Simplified Chinese, distributed mainly in mainland China. An easy way to tell the difference is to look at the set code. If it ends with F, it's traditional Chinese, and if it ends with C, it's Simplified Chinese. Simplified Chinese also has a authentication stamps on most cards on the bottom left. Now this is where the Chinese market really stands out. We're not just talking about localized versions of English or Japanese cards. Pokemon has been going out of its way to release exclusive promos in Simplified Chinese, and they've been bangers. The best example is the 151 Mew. This thing hit like a tidal wave. It was a promo only 1,510 were ever given out, but it was by a lottery system, which you needed to complete 15 in-person events to be even admitted to, and it immediately exploded. Today, selling in a PSA 10 for around $15,000. This is not something we're used to in the US, and it shows the Pokemon company is really trying to win over the Chinese market directly and jumpstart the secondary market. It seems like a trend is giving out limited supplies of cards. Like the Mew, there's also this Gengar, which only 2,000 were given out during tournaments, which was our hit in Fusion Strike. Some other really interesting cards are the 151 Pikachus. Some people are saying these are going to be the next Poncho Pikachus, which I think is a little extreme, but the Gengar one is really cool. And I think a lot of people are trying to grab these before they skyrocket and basically getting on the base floor, and I think that's something we should definitely be watching. Here's where China's market gets even more interesting. Currently, PSA is not accepting cards from mainland China for grading because of the tariffs. This means collectors can't get their cards sent in for grading like we can in the US. Many rely on friends abroad or middlemen to send in bulk, which can add costs, risk, and time. But here's the twist. A new government-backed grading company called CCIC, China's Certification and Inspection Group, is becoming popular. Still, outside of China, CCI subs aren't well known yet, which makes them hard to sell globally. So while they offer a solution, they also create a split. I think it'll be interesting to see if CCI gets adapted into the US and Japan, or if eventually PSA will take over. It really shows the Pokemon company is really trying to win over China through their exclusive promos and the anti-counterfeit measures they're going through to make sure these are a safe investment. And it makes sense. With China's population being 4 times the US's, there's just so much more fans to capture. So what do Chinese collectors actually chase? For starters, Pikachu is still king. But beyond that, there's a lot more attention on modern cards, especially flashy alt art cards. I think it'll be very interesting to watch how the Chinese collectors and market grows and adapts. Since they do not have the history we have since they started in Sun and Moon, they might actually pick other favorite Pokemon and cause the price of that Pokemon in the US to go up since they don't have the cards that we have. Like in this example, if they become a big fan of Mew, that might make all Mews, English and Japanese, rise in price as you have a lot more people interested in these cards. It will be interesting to see if the China market grows a lot, if they will become interested in Japanese or English cards, specifically vintage. So even if a fraction of those collectors go deep into the hobby, it could reshape Pokemon forever. China also has a lot of money, so they could easily put a lot of money into these cards, but also sprinkle a lot of money into Japanese markets and the US. But I think most people have the idea that Japanese and US will only ever be the two big languages, but I think China can bump in and create a third one that is just as big as the other two, and maybe even surpass both. Here's the big question. What does all this mean for the future? China has a population 4 times bigger than the US and 11 times bigger than Japan, and yet their Pokemon market is still young. If even a fraction of those collectors go deep into the hobby, it could completely reshape the global landscape, but it's not guaranteed. Grading accessibility in the Pokemon company's decision will shape how things evolve, and it's still early. But if you're the type who likes to spot patterns before they become trends, this is a market to keep your eye on. But it's not just an extension of Japan or the US. It's a whole different world with its own rules and its own hype and its own future. If you're curious like I am, start paying attention. You don't have to go all in. Just start learning, exploring, and seeing where the market's going. But this is not a guaranteed investment that it will grow. Pokemon has showed extreme favoritism, but that might stop, and China might not pick it up as well as we think. It's still early and still has a lot of room to evolve and change. I'm definitely going to keep my eye on this one and definitely probably pick up some cards for my own collection. It is also important to note that both Chinese languages are printed in Japan using the same press, which means they're extremely high quality and have very nice textures. And I highly recommend, if a chase card is a little too expensive, to try to find it in one of these two languages. Some of these cards can be vastly different in price with the same amount of quality, just because they're so cheap, and can be some real Pokemon memorabilia that you can get for cards you maybe don't want to shell out the full price for. So yeah, the Pokemon market in Japan is exploding, but it's not just an extension of the US or Japan. It's something completely different, with its own rules, hype, and future. If you're curious like I am, start paying attention. You don't have to go all in, just start learning, exploring, and seeing where the market goes. Thanks for watching, and happy collecting. And let me know in the comments below what you think the future of the Chinese market entails, and if you're picking up some copies of your own.